instruction while students are in session. And so I guess maybe just with a nod of a head, if Mr. Solberg can confirm like that's kind of the difference between those two dates, the second meeting in February versus the first in March, that might be something that would happen.
As we're not calling the university BPAC meetings, if it were to be at the last meetings in February, I would have to have the council packet material done by Wednesday of next week at noon. And I'm not sure with their meeting schedule, and that might be unrealistic to have them convene, and I'm not sure if they publicly notice also. So I would say no later than March 9th and 10th meetings, and if something were to happen and I could meet with them and have materials ready by noon of next Wednesday. But I think realistically, you have to go through the feedback, and it's not just a one and done meeting with that. We do try to evaluate everything as much as we can.
And so setting it back to March 9th and 10th, would that put this in jeopardy of construction during the school season?
Potentially. I don't know if it has a bigger, we still have adequate time if it's March and we get it advertised and awarded in May to start construction sometime out into July if everything lines up like it should. There's also weather throws. I mean, if we have a couple weeks worth of weather, that's going to have a bigger impact than a delay at this point too. So obviously any delay now makes it more difficult to meet later, but it's not the only factor that would go into it. Okay. I would say. And it's not, in my opinion, I don't think it's the worst. If it extends into the school year, we're able to manage traffic, and we would accommodate pedestrians so pedestrians could get through to campus. All during construction in the summer, we're going to allow access off of First Avenue into their parking lot, so they would be able to come down First Avenue and get in. So even if school's in session, we would struggle through with our student partners.
Any other questions or discussion in regards to the amendment? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Berge.
Aye.
Christofferson.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Gregert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
No.
And that street project is postponed 9 to 1. Moving on to agenda item number 14. Is a resolution ordering sidewalk to be repaired in accordance with Wisconsin statute section 66.0907 on the following streets. Does council have any questions in regards to the sidewalk repair resolution? Seeing none, then on a motion by Councilmember Gregert and seconded by Council Vice President Emmanuel, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Worthman.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Berge.
Aye.
Christofferson.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Gregert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye. And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 15 is a resolution authorizing fourth quarter appropriation adjustments for the 2019 adopted budget, 2019 to 2020 year-end budget carryovers, and 2019 year-end carryovers for the adopted budget. Because this item amends the budget, a 2/3 vote of the elected members is required. Council have any questions in regards? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Winsans.
Thank you, Council President Weld. Before you this afternoon are various budget appropriations and carryover requests pertaining to the 2019 budget and getting items closed out. The first category are operating budget appropriations for the 2019 budget. So these are appropriating various grants and other requirements that need to be appropriated for the fourth quarter of 2019. The second category are year-end budget carryovers. These are for capital projects that either are more than 3 years old in the case of non-recurring capital projects, or a year old if they are recurring capital projects. I just want to point out, I think probably Council Vice President Emmanuel and Council Member Worthman may recall that this list of projects in the past, or our list of capital projects in the past, included oftentimes projects that might be 5-6 years old, and that's really not the case anymore. This list of capital projects has been narrowed down dramatically. So now we're talking about projects from 2018 and 2019, as opposed to projects that might be 5, 6, 7 years old that are still on the books. So staff has done a great job in getting this list of projects narrowed down. The next category are for 2019-2020 year-end budget carryovers. These are operating carryovers of projects that were budgeted in 2019 but not completed in 2019, and funding is being carried over to 2020. There are various grants, donations within the library. Also, within community development, funding for the Smart Housing Program and participatory budgeting are being carried over into 2020 because those projects are not yet completed, as well as funding for the council chamber improvements. And the last category is reappropriation of capital funds. This is primarily having to do with various specific projects within the library, and those funds are being combined into a more general category just for library improvements. This doesn't increase any available funding, but really is just transferring or recategorizing those particular projects. So with that, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Any questions from council? I don't see any. Thank you very much. So on a motion by Councilmember Beaton and seconded by Councilmember Anderson, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
Berge.
Aye.
Christofferson.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Gregert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 16 is a resolution approving appointments and reappointments to various boards, commissions, and committees that include the following. A new appointment to an unexpired 3-year term for John Sable, and then a new appointment to an unexpired 3-year term for Matt Pavich for the South Barstow Business Improvement District. And then for the Water Street Business Improvement District, a new appointment to an unexpired 2-year term for Joe Miller. Does council have any questions in regards to these appointments? Seeing none, and on a motion by Councilmember Berge and seconded by Councilmember Christofferson, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Beaton.
Aye.
Berge.
Aye.
Christofferson.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Gregert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
And those appointments are approved. Agenda item number 17 is a resolution approving the final replat for Camden Place 2 located on Daisy Lane. Good afternoon, Mr. Allen.
Good afternoon, Council President Weld and members of the council. Before this afternoon is a request by Real Land Surveying on behalf of CMJM Properties to replat a portion of Camden Place located off of Daisy Lane. This map is from the Plan Commission, so I apologize the numbers are not necessarily consistent with agenda item here, but it's number 3 on this map, just to orient where we are off Jeffers Road, north of the North Crossing. Is an aerial map. Quite a bit has occurred even since this aerial photo from 2 years ago, so this subdivision is nearly getting built out. This is more specifically the lots in question, and a little bit zoomed in portion here. Because this is total of 6 different lots. It exceeds the threshold for going through a certified survey map. So that's why it's before you as a replat. So it's not adjusting any right-of-way or any other public dedications. It's simply looking at creating 6 twin home lots. Essentially allows the developer to take these lots that are zoned R2P as part of the plan development for this overall subdivision. So they are properly zoned for the twin homes. Again, just looking to sell these off as individual units. And again, the proposed building lines would be down the middle of the homes as shown on the plat here. And again, the lots do meet all the R2P zoning district standards. Just for, again, kind of backing up, as you saw with that aerial photo even, this was originally approved back in February of 2018. And again, as we see a new aerial photo later this year, this will be full of homes, both these twin homes and single family detached homes. So with this, again, it was brought before the Plan Commission last week, and they have recommended approval for you this evening. Thank you.
Any questions from council in regards to this item? I don't see any.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. On a motion by Councilmember Klinkhammer and seconded by Councilmember Worthman, this item is moved. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Berge.
Aye.
Christopherson.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Greigert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer. Weld.
Aye.
Worthman. Anderson.
Aye.
Beaton.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 18 is a resolution approving a certified survey map with a right-of-way dedication for Venture Drive and County Line Road. Mr. Allen.
Yes, thank you again, Council President Wald and members of the council. Again, for orientation here, this is item number 4 as shown in this map. Again, although it's agenda item 18 for you here this afternoon. This is located at the extreme northwest corner of the city. This, again, it is a certified survey map, a 1-lot certified survey map. And again, because it is proposing right-of-way dedication, that's why it's going forward through this process and not an administrative CSM. The CSM dedicates northern half of the right-of-way, or 40 feet, showing the aerial here. It's at the southeast corner of Venture Drive and County Line Road. I'll zoom in here a little bit. So again, the CSM dedicates the northern half of the right-of-way, 40 feet for existing County Line Road. On the northern portion of the lot 1, it's the southern half of the right-of-way along County Line Road. Again, and also confirming the right-of-way along Venture Drive there as well. So the lot itself is 4.63 acres as proposed. As a whole, including the right-of-way, it's about 5 acres or just shy of that. The comprehensive plan does show this as industrial. It is within the Gateway Industrial Park. The existing zoning is I1P, looking to be utilized as such. Lot 1 here is created for potential development, and the remaining land, again, quite a bit there, remaining vacant, and be subdivided at a later date. So, the Gateway Industrial Park Industrial Park Corporation is looking to sell off this lot 1 for a prospective buyer. I don't believe that they were announced yet at this point, but again, there's been negotiations for the last several months to create this lot for future users. So going through the process to make this lot a buildable lot and provide it to that potential Gateway Industrial Park user. With that, again, the Plan Commission reviewed this last week and is also recommending approval before you here today.
Any questions from council? I don't see any.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On a motion then by Councilmember Greigert and seconded by Council Vice President Emmanuel, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Christopherson.
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
Greigert.
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Weld.
Aye.
Worthman. Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Berge,
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item 19 is a resolution approving settlement of claimed excessive property tax assessments for various properties. Does council have any additional questions for Mr. Nick in regards to this agenda item? Seeing none, then on a motion by Councilmember Beaton and seconded by Councilmember Anderson, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Council Vice President Emmanuel.
Thank you, Council President. I thought last night that I wasn't going to say anything, and I have to say this has really been on my mind today, and I do feel compelled to say something today. I think, while I certainly will be supporting this settlement and the work that our city staff have put forth, I think that we have a serious problem across the state of Wisconsin that needs our leadership in Madison to take a serious look at the dark box problem that we have going on across the state. The reason why I think this is significant and needs to be addressed by our leadership at the state level is because this creates losers in two ways. One, at the local level, we're losing money now that goes towards serving citizens because of a dispute that cannot be solved at the state level. The state, if they agree to this, the Department of Revenue, if they agree to this, they are also losing money to help residents across our entire state. When we have a state that has a history of broken levy limits, finding ways to collect very modest revenue or assessment from everybody who lives here is important. And while I will support this, I think we have a very large problem that needs courageous leadership across our state of Wisconsin to address this.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councilmember Berge.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to very thoroughly echo what my council member colleagues said, Council Member Vice President Emmanuel. And also, just to point out as well that, it's the same, as it's been described, it's the same pie. And so, when these big businesses, large box businesses, pay less in taxes, it just gets shifted to residents of Eau Claire and smaller businesses in downtown. So it's really not a fair situation. And so just really, I really agree with what my colleagues said and something to remember. And I agree, I hope that our leadership does step up in Madison and help us at the local level.
Thank you, Councilmember Berge. Any other discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Emmanuel,
Aye.
Greigert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer.
Aye.
Well,
Aye.
Worthman.
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Berge,
Aye.
Christofferson.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 20 is a resolution amending the 2018 to 2022 Park Open Space and Recreation Facilities Plan to classify Princeton Park as a neighborhood park. Is there any questions from council in regards to this agenda item? Seeing none, then on a motion by Councilmember Berge and seconded by Councilmember Christofferson, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Berge.
Thank you. I'll just think I'm talking a lot tonight. But just want to make a comment that this is very exciting for the neighborhood, Princeton area neighborhood. As Ms. O'Brien or was Mr. Van Ness said last night, that they've been waiting, the residents have been waiting for a very long time, almost 40 years for this park that's been talked about but never has come to reality. So this is just very exciting, and there's been a lot of neighborhood engagement process stemming from 2 years ago, as Mr. Allen stated last night when they all showed up here, one of my first meetings here on council. And then even on the neighborhood meetings, we involved the whole neighborhood association of what they would like to see in the park. Involved sticky notes and big pieces of paper and great ideas and voting, and it was just a really great exercise, which then was brought to the city staff to help create the plan that we saw last night. So I know that the Neighborhood Association will continue the momentum, and they're talking about more ways to get engaged, and I'm excited to see how this keeps going. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Berge. Any other discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Gragert,
Aye.
Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Berge,
Aye.
Christofferson,
Aye.
Emmanuel.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. Agenda item number 21 is an ordinance for action, rezoning a property located on West Princeton Avenue from R1 to P Public, and to adopt the general development plan with site plan for a park with site improvements. Is there any questions from staff in regards to this agenda item? Seeing none, and on a motion by Councilmember Klinkhammer and seconded by Councilmember Worthman, this item is moved. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Beaton?
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Klinkhammer,
Aye.
Weld,
Aye.
Worthman,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Beaton,
Aye.
Berge,
Aye.
Christofferson,
Aye.
Emmanuel,
Aye.
Gragert.
Aye.
And that item passes unanimously. We moves us to the end of our meeting and announcements from City Manager Peters.
Thank you, Councilman President Weld. Two things. One, a week from Friday, on February 21st, from 7 to 8:30, is the Chamber's Eggs and Issues. And next, that presentation is the State of the City, put on by Council President Weld and myself, and we will do everything we can to make that an exciting and informative use of your time, and hope that you're able to join us a week from Friday. If you haven't signed up for that, please contact Kathy. And then also, as you know, last week I announced my retirement after 30 years. And I am looking forward very much to working with you for a very smooth transition as you recruit for a new city manager. And the first step of that is a work session. So I apologize for adding to your workload, but it will add to your workload. And so we have a work session following this meeting to discuss the first steps of that recruitment process for a new city manager. So that's what I have for
Thank you, City
announcements.
Manager Peters. Councilmember Beaton.
Yeah, I wanted to just make an announcement to council members and to the public that the advisory committee on appointments is looking for applicants for some of our boards, committees, and commissions. In addition, some of the boards, committees, and commissions that we've had open for a long time, but also the Housing Opportunities Commission and is it the Board of Review? Is the last one? Yeah. So we're taking applications from citizens, new applications from citizens for those two as well. So lots of opportunities to be involved in our city for citizens. And so I wanted to put a call out to anybody listening and also to request that city council members think about people in their neighborhoods or in their networks who might be good to serve on these. Thank you.
Any other announcements from council? Councilmember Gregor.
Yeah, thank you, President Weld. I just wanted to thank our city clerk for all the work on establishing the early voting, or otherwise more officially known as in-person absentee voting, for folks to start voting already for the February 18th primary for Wisconsin Supreme Court next week. Just so folks know, this week was the first time, I guess, in my memory, and maybe ever, for the city to have in-person absentee voting available in the evening. So for this election, it was for the week before the election. So today, Tuesday, the polls will be open till 8 at the fire station behind City Hall, and also Wednesday and Thursday of this week. Then Friday they'll be open typical hours till 5 o'clock, so 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday this week, and then until 5 on Friday. So just kind of an exciting thing I wanted to acknowledge, and I know there are other staff that were involved in making that happen. And I was the third person to vote early in the evening last night, and I was wearing my sticker, but I couldn't get it to stick again for a second day.
Thank you,
But
Councilmember
thank you.
Gregert. Any other announcements? Council Vice President Emmanuel.
Thank you. I don't have an announcement, but I just don't want it to be lost in the shuffle of the significance of Mr. Peters' announcement. That's a big deal and not an easy decision, I'm sure, to make. And so I just want to lift that up and honor that. Thank you for your decades of service. I know and I trust we'll have lots of opportunities to honor you. And we've got important work to get to, but I just wanted to publicly say thank you very much for all you have invested with our community.
Thank you.
Any other announcements? Seeing none, if there is no objection from council, we will adjourn. If possible, we would like to move into the work session as
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689 or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org. This program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
the Eau Claire City Council is now in session. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Anderson. Beaton.
Here.
Berge.
Here.
Christofferson.
Here.
Emmanuel.
Here.
Gregert.
Here.
Klinkhammer.
Here.
Lohr.
Yeah.
Weld.
Here.
Worthman.
And good evening. Again, thank you to all of you that are joining us here for our public hearings and public discussion. Again, today is Monday, February 10th. And again, during our Monday meetings, the Eau Claire City Council conducts public hearings, listening sessions, and public discussion where residents in our community are invited and encouraged to ask questions and weigh in on important decisions we will be making at our legislative session either tomorrow at 4 p.m. in these chambers or in coming weeks or months ahead. We want to thank Valley Media Works for live streaming this proceeding. To those of you that can't join us here in person tonight, to watch, please visit valleymediaworks.org or visit channel 994 on Spectrum Cable. It is also simulcast at 101.9 FM. And if you wish to pull up past meetings, you can do that on YouTube under the Chippewa Valley Media Works channel. If you plan to address the council this evening, I'll briefly review the protocol. Once an agenda item is introduced, staff will present on that item, and following that presentation, council may have questions to clarify the issue. We will then open up the item for public input. Once the item is open for comment, please come forward one at a time, and when you approach, please begin by introducing yourself with your name and your address, and then begin sharing your comments. We will welcome you to speak for 5 minutes. You will see 3 lights before you. The first light is green, which will begin illuminating when you begin to speak. It will then turn yellow when you have 1 minute left. And when the light turns red, that indicates you've reached your 5 minutes, and I politely ask you to wrap up your comments. Sometimes council members will have questions for you after your comments, and so please give us a moment before leaving or stepping away from the podium. If you wish to speak on an item that is not listed on the agenda, you may do so during the public comment period at the end of the meeting. If you haven't done so yet, there is a sign-up sheet on the table at the back of the room there. And again, that would be for the comment period at the end of our meeting. Lastly, if you're not comfortable speaking at the podium, you can fill out a comment form at the table at the back of the room. And those comments are then distributed to council members ahead of our legislative meeting tomorrow night. As always, you can email or call us. Our information and contact information is on the website, as well as it is on the table at the back of the room. With that introduction, excuse me, we'll get on to our first order of business. There are 2 items scheduled for a public hearing this evening. The first item is street improvements. A public hearing on proposed street, utility, and sidewalk improvements on the following streets: Fairfax Street, Claremont Avenue to Henry Avenue, Gateway Drive from Trill Road to Glenbrook Drive, Riverview Drive from Welsh Court to North Boat Launch, 3rd Street from Truax Boulevard to Long Street, and Water Street, 1st Avenue to 2nd Avenue. Good evening, Mr. Solberg.
Good evening, thank you. If it is okay with the City Council, if I could present the streets in 3 groups. The first group with Fairfax Street and Water Street, they're similar in construction. The second group with Gateway Drive and 3rd Street, they're more maintenance related. And then Riverview Drive is a larger kind of separate street, if that's okay.
Sure,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. So our first 2 streets are Fairfax Street from Claremont Avenue south to Henry Street. That lies within the Arlington Heights neighborhood. The utilities with Fairfax Street date to the 1950s and 1960s. It's a collector street with the bituminous pavement dates to the 1960s and 70s. Current street width is 36 feet wide. Once you get into the straight sections, you have some tapers coming into and out of Claremont Avenue and the frontage road. But once you are on the straight stretch, it's 36 feet. It has 100% of sidewalk along the route, and the pavement condition index on a scale of 100 ranges between 43 and 55. What the project proposes for Fairfax Street is to replace the underground utilities and then replace the street to the same width that currently exists with new sidewalk and curb and gutter. It also proposes reconstructing the existing islands at Claremont Avenue if necessary with our utility tie-ins to accommodate future on-street bicycle lanes. And also an addition of a crosswalk is proposed across Fairfax Street along the south side of the Claremont Avenue frontage road. And then I'll go through the overview drawings next. But when we were looking at Fairfax Street, it starts on the south side of Eau Claire, south of Meadowview Elementary School. It ends at Hastings Way, and it's a large collector route. There are 3 schools along the route. There's a future redevelopment at the Kmart site, and there are also numerous high-density housing developments along the route, and it seemed to be a good candidate for in the future to have an on-street bicycle system. We're not reconstructing the whole stretch this time, but over the next 5 years, I would anticipate the majority of Fairfax will be reconstructed in the city of Eau Claire, and there's a portion in the town of Washington also. So one of the goals of this project was to make sure this first stretch that we have gets us set up as Fairfax is reconstructed to at least have the physical infrastructure in for on-street bike lanes when that time comes. Of note, that would require some parking restrictions in the future. So physically, we would like to accommodate it, but the parking restrictions would be something for a future council to consider. This is the south stretch of Fairfax. It's being reconstructed the same width that currently exists. Sidewalk will be replaced if there are any stretches that are long enough to be economically remain in place. They will be saved. And as you go north, that is Lexington Boulevard is the intersection on the left of the screen. And when you continue to go towards the right of the screen, which is north, you see the pedestrian crossing. We had feedback that as cars are queuing at the lights at that intersection, there are pedestrians crossing Fairfax in between lights. So what we're hoping is with a marked crosswalk and a sign accompanying it saying, please do not block crosswalk, that at a minimum, it'll be a little bit safer than currently exists, although it is a fairly stressful intersection and area to cross via pedestrian methods. And then as we come into Claremont Avenue, when the DOT redid Claremont Avenue in 2008, the islands are largely set up to ensure that you can have on-street bike lanes crossing Claremont Avenue. We will continue that if we have to remove islands when we're doing our utility tie-ins to make sure that this connection for on-street bike lanes would be able to continue across Claremont Avenue to Memorial High School and Hy-Vee and other points of interest from there. So that is Fairfax Street. Are there any questions on Fairfax before I go to Water Street?
Does council have any questions? Councilmember Christopherson.
Thank you, President Weld. Mr. Solberg, for my own curiosity, I can see what the difficulty would be in having the light at the intersection and the crosswalk so far in, so that is this where I read that there may be a flashing light at the crosswalk location?
We weren't proposing an RRFB. We will put a sign up to alert motorists not to park in it, at least when they're queuing. But this one, we weren't proposing one like we just opened on State Street. That's on our Riverview Drive project.
Yeah, I can see that would be difficult. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions in regards to Fairfax? I don't see any.
Okay, then our next project is on Water Street. This project this stretch was brought before the council last year as a mill and fill. We were going to do just a 2-inch mill and then put 2 inches of asphalt on top of that. After it passed council, we had some concerns with a water main that our utility partners had concerns that it wouldn't last the 7 or 8 years that a mill and fill was designed to last before significant pavement would need to be replaced. So we held off on the mill and fill project last year, brought it back as a reconstruct this year. So in this stretch of Water Street, the water main dates to 1915. This is a candidate, although there aren't lead service lines off of this line that are active. This would be in the era of lead service lines. The storm sewer in that section is from 1945. There is no sanitary sewer. So what the project this year is proposing is a utility reconstruct underneath, pavement replacement on top. Last year we were going to try to sneak bike lanes in with narrow lane width to keep the curb locations the same with the type of pavement treatment. Since it's being reconstructed, we're proposing the street to be 4 feet wider to accommodate on-street bike lanes that would be 4 feet of asphalt and 1.5 feet of concrete from the gutter, or in the areas where there isn't gutter next to the bike lanes, then it's 5 feet of asphalt. So what this project proposes is a slight widening of Water Street primarily on the eastern end of the project. And as you go towards the intersection with 2nd Avenue, the cross-section remains similar to slightly smaller along slightly narrower along the left side of Water Street. Currently, at the intersection of 2nd Avenue and Water Street, there's areas that are striped out on both sides with only 2 lanes of traffic in the middle. That area of buffered space remains on the north side, but on the south side, it's replaced with an on-street bike lane. So with the project, I'll go through the 2 slides for that. This is 2nd Avenue. We're proposing replacing the crosswalks, extending the on-street bike lanes that start at 1st Avenue up to 2nd Avenue. And at some point in the future, the discussion will be had on extending the bike lanes from 2nd Avenue up to, I believe it's 6th Avenue, where they pick up and they go south, or go to the west to connect the on-street bike lanes, but at least for this project, we're getting another block worth out of that. New utilities, and as we approach the First Avenue intersection, we're proposing a bike box for the eastbound bicycle traffic, on-street bicycle lanes each direction. The radius that's to the top, where people turning right onto Water Street from First Avenue, that will be reconstructed to a tighter or a shorter radius that will still allow semis and buses to go around that radius. The reason it's large like that is because the two streets meet at an acute angle, so they have to, that radius gets pulled back so buses don't hop the curb. And then we are also going to be proposing, similar to Garfield Avenue, a hold phase for pedestrians. So for 20 seconds, cars will stay out of the intersection and pedestrians would be able to cross, although we have higher safety at this location or lower crash rates than we have had on the other intersection. We proposed that on Garfield on State Street. We presented this to BPAC, the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory. Committee, and they were supportive of the on-street bicycle lanes. They had requested a consideration for a scatter intersection, which a scatter intersection is something where you hold traffic out of the intersection, and when the lights are red, you can go all directions. During the discussion, it was brought up to have an intersection that was completely painted in between the crosswalks, so all diagonal. That there are no instances that I could find worldwide with the configurations that I was able to find from very few in the United States and Los Angeles, and then Canada and overseas, typically marks the routes with a cross on this. They're fairly rare, but the premise is you don't have to cross Water Street and then cross First Avenue to get diagonal. You would cross diagonally right from Water Street to the east side of First Avenue when you have that hold phase. I did not include that as a recommendation at this point, just for the, I guess, the newness of it. I did not find any examples in the Midwest. I think it has a sound logic behind it, but that was one recommendation that from BPAC to consider that at this location. And largely what it would look like is it would make a triangle of pedestrian crossings. And can I borrow that? If the arrow will show up on the screen. So it would include a diagonal crossing over here if that's something the council would like to pursue. And when the lights were red and pedestrians are only allowed, then a pedestrian could go across diagonally. They could go any direction within that to cross. So not a standard practice, but it's something that is starting to get some attention with pedestrian safety in urban situations. And then lastly, the pavement markings from this point to the east with the bike lanes that we received so much feedback on with the Water Street Bridge project, those pavement markings are about halfway through their useful life. So in about 4 years, the entire stretch of Water Street that was rebuilt with Water Street Bridge project and our project on the east of that, we're going to be exploring restriping that bike lane, so it might not be between the right turn lane and the through lane. And at that point, we had said it would be more appropriate to look at putting a bike box in this location, because that green paint, a full bike box runs between $8,000 and $10,000, so it's very expensive paint. And if it's only going to be there for 4 years, I would like to get as much life out of it as possible. So we proposed a more modest bike box that would stay within the bike lane, just to hold the bicycles and help highlight that the presence of bikes in that location. So this work will also be highly coordinated with Second and Chippewa. We'll have 3 sides of the university's parking lot potentially under construction overlapping timeframes. And we're working with the university to allow them temporary access off of First Avenue into their parking lot during construction. So if I don't take any questions on this one.
Any questions from council in regards to the Water Street? Councilmember Berge.
Thank you, Council President. I was wondering with the scatter intersection, that's really interesting, but it sounds like you found other examples like in LA and where else was it?
Vancouver, British Columbia, and China.
Okay. I was just wondering how that works. Obviously in the winter, the lines would be more covered up, and so would that add how that would work? If it works in Vancouver, maybe.
Well, I think with Water Street being an arterial, our street maintenance folks do a very good job of getting it down to bare pavement shortly thereafter. But you would have some salt residue that would help cover the whiteness on those. Largely, it's accompanied not only by the markings that you see, but you need the traffic signals that wouldn't be covered, and the awareness and the habit of people driving through there, so they know that there's no right turn on red when it's in that signal phase. So I don't have so much of a concern if those aren't as contrasting in the winter as making sure that the signage and the lights above ground are visible and clearly understood.
So there'd be lights or signage as well?
Yep.
Okay.
So.
Councilmember Christopherson.
Thank you, President Weld. Mr. Solberg, has this alternative been discussed with the university in any way?
This has not. We discussed last year's alternative with the university, and this year we have not been back to like the Student Senate or the University BPAC Commission. We've been to the city BPAC a couple of times, but we haven't specifically reached out last year, I guess partially due to time. This is one of the earlier projects, and then also last year's project they endorsed, and this one's a little bit better than last year's with the bike lanes are wider and the streets are a little bit wider. So we felt it was consistent in spirit to last year's, only a little bit better. But we haven't taken feedback or any resolutions from the university specifically.
May I follow up?
Certainly.
So was the scatter intersection part of the proposal last year, or is it been any decision?
It was not last
Okay.
year, no.
So we really don't know how they may regard this?
Correct. I don't know if well, I don't want to speak for them.
Council Vice President Emmanuel.
Thank you, Council President Weld. My question is along the lines of Councilmember Christopherson, and I see we have our illustrious BPAC chairperson in the audience tonight. Is there a university student that's on BPAC that you know of? And if so, might they have rendered an opinion or had conversations at the university?
I'm not sure. Apparently there is not a student representative. After I was discussing this with Councilmember Greger earlier today, and I did send drawings on to a member of the university BPAC for comment, and I have not received an email back from that yet. But as far as attending the BPAC meetings, the city BPAC, I'm not sure if anybody attended from the university. I don't recall a large public component at those meetings, but.
Thank you very much. And thank you also for looking at outside of the box idea.
We're open-minded. I mean, we don't say no first. So.
Any other questions? Councilmember Greger.
Yeah, thank you, President Weld, and thank you, Mr. Solberg, for your work on this and kind of looking at it as a full reconstruct project, keeping in mind all the opportunities that come with that. I guess part of that conversation I've had with some university folks, and I don't think they've had time to digest yet the new opportunities that come with having a full reconstruct. But one of the things that I discussed with one of the representatives of the university BPAC was having, or Bike Ped Committee, was having was helping to make it easier for bicyclists who are going north from the footbridge on campus over by Haas to the bike lanes on First Avenue to head north. Because right now, if you cross using the crosswalk, you end up on the wrong side of the street to use the bike lanes northbound. Mm-hmm. So could you explain maybe how it would work And obviously the scatter intersection could work for this, but another alternative that I believe is out there is to have like a bike signal that could be, you could like press a button to be able to get a signal to cross diagonally to the bike lane. Is that something that's possible?
I don't know. I guess if this was a standard T intersection, a traditional intersection would have a crosswalk here, as well as a crosswalk here, instead of being diagonal. This is a little bit different with the alignments on here. I guess the first with if there was the scatter phase with the scatter intersection, and you went diagonally from here, when it's that pedestrian and bicycle phase, they would be able to cross here, and they could either continue down the trail and access the trail along the river, or they could access the on-street bicycle lanes and continue going that direction. Same with coming from the other direction. They would be able to continue through here up onto the sidewalk as well. If you had a crosswalk here, it would involve the red dots are traffic signals that we have out there. You need to have a push button, and you need to have that reinforcing the countdown timer to get across, and it would require adding that infrastructure here specifically for a crosswalk that really would be redundant with more of a single crossing that is there. As far as a signal that only provides for bicycles to traverse, I'm not aware of like a bicycle only. I think the scatter with the bicycles and pedestrians go together with that. And that would offer that 20 seconds or 25 seconds, whatever the phase length would be that's appropriate for the traffic out here. That would offer an opportunity for the bicyclists that are waiting at this location to go to their points of destination, whether it's to continue this way or continue more north on there. So.
Any other questions from council?
Say one more, actually.
Councilmember Gregory.
Yeah, thank you, President Weld. Another thing that has come up through conversation and experience of using this area a lot is the crossing at 2nd Avenue of Water Street, and how we could potentially enhance that for pedestrian safety and maybe narrow that crossing a little bit through a bump out, or it seems like we could also create a boulevard instead of a hatched area and just narrow down the road on that end too. So I'm not sure where your thoughts are.
So currently at this intersection, there's a hatched area on the north and there's a hatched area on the south, and there are lanes of traffic that drive in between, one each direction, and you have turn lanes. The center line is shifted over slightly, so you have a through lane of traffic, and on the south, you have a bike lane. So there isn't room to put a bump out on the south side or narrow it. You would impact that bicycle lane. On the north side, in the hatched area that's here, it already prohibits traffic with a paint marking. It's not a physical barrier like you have with a bump out you see on Barstow Street and Graham Avenue downtown. The one benefit that this has is it's easier for our maintenance folks to plow it. They don't have to pull up their wing when they go around. The downside is, that physical barrier does offer some additional reassurance for somebody that's behind that curb. So there would be an opportunity. I mean, if that was a council desire to put a concrete bump out on one corner here, but you're limited in width to maybe 6 feet or so without getting into the area that has your bike lane in there.
I guess just as a follow-up to that, so rather than having the hatched area, couldn't we just have like a boulevard though, and then have the street be narrower? I guess I'm just not understanding why we have the hatched area at all.
You could have the curb line follow that.
Yeah.
And it would be straight. That would be, then you just have more grass in between. That's an option.
Because I figure that narrows the crossing just as much.
Mm-hmm. But the only thing that does is if there would be a desire at some point in the future to have a right turn lane, 10, 15, 20 years, you'd be removing the curb. I don't know. I think it was a conscious effort to remove that in the past. We're not proposing that at this time. So that's really the only drawback. But yeah, that curb line could definitely be moved out and grass or something in there, or wider bike lane.
Councilmember Christopherson.
Thank you, President Weld. Mr. Solberg, just following Mr. Gregor's questions, in future road construction as you proceed down Water Street, I'm wondering about that pedestrian refuge as opposed to narrowing the street. Is there potential to have a pedestrian refuge on the other side of that intersection?
The other side of the intersection in the future, I think the discussion is going to be, do we get rid of that two-way left turn lane? And do you replace that with bike lanes on the outside? That block is now developed with the Mogensen Aspenson building, so you don't have as many left turns. So that would be one way to further those on-street bike lanes, at least down to Third, is if the center line is in the middle of the street where you see the white arrow, instead of the lanes being off to the side, and traffic goes in a more traditional fashion. So we're eyeing up as we go through with Water Street and planning to have the discussion with the bicycling community and the bid down there to see how, what the appetite is to connect that, because I think there's a strong case to be had to connect State Street with Menominee Street, especially when Sonotay goes through with an on-street bike lane that helps link all of the university's asset on that. So that wasn't part of this project, but it is something we're looking at.
Any other questions from council? I just have one. Any pedestrian counts or studies done on that intersection to see if there's the number of people heading?
We didn't do any pedestrian counts like we had on State Street where we sat at the intersections where we were changing. We proposed at State Street to remarket, or not State Street, at Second, to remarket largely the way it was. We did pull some traffic data to see if there was anything that was alarming, and there wasn't an alarming pedestrian trend with it. But as far as, at least at Second, with which direction is going.
Yeah, I guess I was referring to the Water Street and First intersection.
Oh, Water Street and First.